This is a good one. We talk about justice reform not working. Here's a perfect example of that. Blue City, San Francisco, erupts as 91-time felon. Let me read that again. 91-time felon tries to dodge prison, weasel into rehab after crash. Police say 𝗧𝗏𝗪𝗧𝗛𝗧 was intoxicated when he ran a red light in a stolen car, killing 𝗪𝗧𝗏𝗪𝗧𝗛, 60, and 𝗪𝗏𝗘𝗔𝗦𝗧𝗑𝗍, 27. Yeah, killed a couple of people. He's already got 91 felonies. And now, he wants to go to rehab. Let's get into it. Here we go. A career criminal is asking to swap prison time for a drug treatment program nearly 5 years after his New Year's Eve rampage in downtown San Francisco, allegedly killing 2 pedestrians, reigniting a fierce debate over California's woke criminal justice practices. Well, that's why you got so many numbnuts running around committing crimes willy-nilly, because they know if they get in a pinch, and they've already got 45 felonies, that is literally half of the guy we're talking about here. Nothing's going to happen to him. I mean, maybe depending upon the crime, they'll do a couple of years. They'll literally do a couple of years for whatever. I mean, and that's if they get convicted, and that's if they actually get sentenced instead of doing some absolute mindless, stupid diversion. He's a good guy who was just a little bit hungry and he had some childhood abuse. Well, yeah, we're going to talk about that. That is what Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell recently said in a debate. He's behind in the race in Seattle. He's behind by like 9.5 points because we got an utter nut job coming in that's going to win. Democratic Socialist of America, Mamdani Light. That's who's going to run Seattle. We'll have Mamdani running New York. Oh, it's going to be fun. It's going to be just podcasts forever. But in a debate, Bruce Harrell literally said, I have no desire to incarcerate multi-time convicted felon. I have no desire to incarcerate them at all. I want to hear their story. I want to hear their background. And you're like, what? They're a career criminal, and you're wanting to hear their story. That's how justice reform works. It doesn't. It doesn't. On Friday, Troy McAllister's attorney, Scott Grant, asked the court to grant mental health and substance abuse diversion under California's penal code, yada yada, which could allow McAllister to enter treatment instead of facing decades in prison if Judge Michael Burgert rules that he qualifies. What about 3 strikes and you're out? What happened to that? It's racist. It's racist. In Deep Blue, San Francisco, residents rallied to protest what they say would undermine accountability. That is already gone. You toss that out with 𝗧𝗜𝗑𝗏 Boudin. Remember, he was like, my parents spent 45 years in prison, therefore nobody else should go to prison. And they were in prison for what? Attempting to murder somebody? Something like that? Can't even remember. Justice reform. Oh, yeah. 91 felonies, 2 deaths, no more chances. Signs read outside San Francisco's Hall of Justice. Judge 𝗥𝗘𝗔𝗦𝗪𝗓 chooses, I don't know how to pronounce that, Judge 𝗥𝗘𝗔𝗦 chooses politics over public safety. Justice now. Okay, but the problem is, folks in San Francisco, and the problem is West Coast, Best Coast, we invariably hire these politicians. We vote these politicians into office, and we vote these judges into office that are soft on crime. That's what we do. You gotta go. My last podcast was how in Oklahoma State, they just rounded up hundreds of criminal illegals that many of them had driver's license with no name given, and many of them were driving big commercial rigs. Because states like mine, Washington State, handed them a driver's license. State like New York City handed them a commercial driver's license without a name on it. because they're ideologically so bad, so terrible. So when you have these folks in these communities who all of a sudden, see the light, you got to tell them, hey, the reason you're in the hole that you're in, the reason that you don't have enough police for public safety, any of those kinds of things, is because that's what you've been voting for years. In California, I mean, it's just a known quantity, right? Case of McAllister, 50, has long been a lightning rod of restorative justice reform, forcing elected officials to confront whether policies meant to show compassion to offenders put the public at risk. I'm going to go out here on a limb and say, yes, they do. Because look at the end results. Look at the recidivism rate. That's a hard word to say, right? Look at that rate. Oh, it's 99.92%. Okay. All right. And that other part that they didn't re-offend, that's because they're dead. Oh, okay. I'm wild exaggeration, but that's kind of how that goes, right? The motion to send him to rehab instead of prison for the rest of his life has sparked protests outside San Francisco's Hall of Justice, with community members and victims' families calling the diversion request an insult to justice. This is normal, though. This is normal. This is what justice reform looks like. Not incarcerating the bad guy, letting the bad guy just run around in society, and what could go wrong? No shenanigans. There will not be any shenanigans. That guy's going to get his life back in order. He's going to go to rehab. Like, really? That's what you believe? Really? You are dumb. That's all I got. You're dumb. That's stupid. That makes no sense at all. But hey, just keep going with it, because podcast for days. Some have even threatened to recall Berger if diversion is granted. Troy McAllister has been charged with 91 felonies over the course of his multi-decades career here in San Francisco, and we don't think that someone should be given infinite chances to ultimately correct course, said Scotty Jacobs, director of Blueprint for a Better San Francisco. God, what does that look like? I mean, I give credit to people in these big blue cities that are trying to kickstart something new. But I think most of them they're just, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, they're lost. They are ideologically lost. They are so head up ass that they can't work their way out to vote for somebody, even if they're a moderate Democrat, because no Republican's ever going to get elected in these cities. You just don't have that. You don't have that. And it's because, I mean, we need to protect, our citizens from ICE. You mean the federal organization tasked with law enforcement of deporting criminal illegals from your community, making your community safer? You don't want that in your community? Okay, I got it. All right. Yep. Seattle right now is working on the genius plan of banning face masks from ICE. They have no business doing so. It's the stupidest thing. Oh, you can't wear a face mask here. Oh, you can't. No, you got to show your face because we want to dox you. I mean, state has nothing to do with federal law enforcement. You know what I mean? Fed always trumps state, right? While there are certain people who should be granted diversion and ultimately given the opportunity to rebuild their lives, Troy McAllister has demonstrated that despite being given that opportunity multiple times, 91 felonies? He's continued to pose a threat to San Franciscans, and we believe he needs to be in jail. You think? Here is the genius who thinks that maybe he should just go to treatment. Let's go to rehab. Hey, maybe he's just got an addiction problem. 91 felonies, and you're coming up with that now? McAllister was on parole. 91-time felon on parole on December 31st, 2020, when he allegedly drove a stolen car, while intoxicated, ran a red light, and ran over Hanako Abe, 27, and Elizabeth Platt, 60, killed them. And now they want to give him treatment. McAllister's long rap sheet has become a symbol of the larger question facing San Francisco, whether repeat offenders should get one more chance at rehab or finally face life in prison. How many times do you have to let them out and then go, oh, yeah, maybe that wasn't a good call. Maybe the shenanigans they committed afterwards. I kind of think that officials don't really care. They're like, yeah, this is what justice reform looks like. Police said 27-year-old 𝗬𝗧𝗑 and 60-year-old Platt were killed. McAllister ran through a red light, driving a car in a meth-fueled rampage. A meth-fueled rampage. 91 felony convictions, stolen car, blows through a red light, and he should get rehab. He should get rehab. After allegedly stealing a cash register and a laptop from a sandwich shop nearby. Police said he got out of the car after the crash and ran into a nearby building where he was arrested within minutes. Good. McAllister is facing a slew of charges, including manslaughter in connection to the crash. Good. That is what should happen. I mean, a lightning rod for California's justice reform. I mean, you know what that looks. There's 𝗧𝗜𝗠𝗘𝗦𝗧𝗔𝗠𝗣𝗕. There's our boy who just, hey, man, let everybody out of prison. They're all good people. Maybe they were hungry. Maybe they just needed a sandwich. Maybe they just needed a hug. Guy raped and killed a 5-year-old girl and beheaded the mom. You know what I mean? He didn't have a good childhood. Let's hear what his story is. Let's get into that. This is literally a Democrat, a moderate Democrat, who is having to go so hard to the left to pick up additional votes because he ain't going to do it with where he sits right now. He's going to get soundly defeated at the polls when Seattle votes by a Democratic Socialist of America because the pushback on Trump getting so much done in his first year that's really upset the libtards. Bruce Harrell is having to absolutely bend the knee and stoop to the far left nut jobs. And this is part of that. Let's watch it.
Over the last several days, Mayor Harrell's comments over one issue has gone viral. It stems from Thursday night's debate presented by Fox 13. Both Harrell and challenger Katie Wilson were asked about the issue of repeat offenders. A short clip of Harrell's comments have been heard across the country. So today we wanted to elaborate more on what he said, but also go into Wilson's response.
This election season, there have been no scarcity of debates between Mayor Harrell and challenger Katie Wilson. This is your debate between the candidates who want to be your next Seattle mayor. The two are scheduled to spar in 20 different mayoral debates, but it was last week's debate, moderated by myself and Emily Parkhurst of Formidable Media, that has gone viral.
So when this person is committing 6 or 7 crimes, I don't know his or her story. Maybe they were abused as a child. Maybe they're hungry.
That is just a snippet of a long answer. One of the topics our debate focused on was public safety. Moderator Emily Parkhurst asked the first question, specifically focusing on repeat offenders.
Is the city too lax on repeat offenders?
That's an interesting question. I don't know how to answer that question. Too lax. I don't know how you gauge that. I know it's necessary to catch criminals in the act of doing bad things. And I have all the faith in my police department, who's a best practice in terms of using force. I need 1,500 officers. I need constitutional arrests. I need people.
And he's got 700? 800 maybe? And he needs 1,500? We all know that to be true. And that's part of what got him elected. But now that he's going up against a far left nut job, he's like, well, maybe they were hungry. Maybe they were abused as a child. Let's hear their story, even though that isn't really how this goes, right? That is an ideologically driven dead end, because in the end of the day, these are criminals, and criminals commit crimes against society. And that's why we try and put them in jail, but not Seattle. And that's why Seattle has become just a revolving door for low and mid-level criminals to do whatever they want. Hey, you want to sexually traffic some women? You want to sexually traffic whatever? Go up to Aurora. You want to pimp out some hoes? Oh yeah, Aurora all day long. You want to go do some drugs? Aurora all day long. You want to have an open air drug market in downtown Seattle? All day long. You want to have an open air drug market in the Chinatown area, 12th and Jackson? All day long. What do we do about it? We need 1,500 cops. Well, you should have thought about that when you defunded the police. And I know that's not Bruce Harrell's deal, but it's the constituents' deal because they voted for this nonsense, and they're going to vote for an absolute Looney Tune, I think, come here this November.
That are killing themselves with drugs to get help, get treatment. So I'm not going to give an opinion on the attitude of my officers. I look at them in the eye and I tell them, this is my vision. George Floyd was murdered.
Some would say George Floyd was a convicted felon with a bad heart that died of a drug overdose, that died of a fentanyl overdose. He was trying to float a $20 bill that was fake at a little mini mart when he was popped, right? He's not a good individual. He's a convicted felon as well. And yet he's been built up to be this absolute martyr. And you look at his rap sheet, held a gun to a pregnant woman's stomach. I mean, that's not exactly honorable, is it? No. Guy was an absolute loser.
And I need you to recruit culturally competent officers. And we created the care department, which is an unarmed response. The largest city in the country to do this. So whether they're lax or not, for me, in all due respect, is just not the question. The question is, are they effective? And they are very effective. I just need to get my numbers up because the defund movement demoralized the police department. I was down 300 when you started, but the good news is we're getting 10 applications a day.
I circled back with Harold for more clarification, and the portion of the answer that followed has now been viewed millions of times across the country.
Mayor Harold, I want to go back to that repeat offender question.
So this is Katie Wilson. This is our Democratic Socialists of America. Our new commie that will be the mayor of Seattle more than likely, because Bruce isn't far left enough for the nut jobs who form the majority that is Seattle.
If somebody has offended 6, 7, 8 times, even if it's a minor offense, but they continue to fail to turn their life around, at what point do you balance public safety to giving this person, some accountability? What is that balance?
So let me make something very clear. I was the one that sponsored the ban the box legislation when everyone opposed it because the criminal system has had a disparate impact.
Banning the box means he doesn't want a box on an employment form that says, or have you been convicted of a crime? When in reality, that protects the community from a lot of jobs where maybe you shouldn't have a convicted criminal applying for said job, right? And I know it brings up all kinds of things. Well, I can't really get a job doing that. Well, there's consequences for actions, right?
On Black and brown communities. Let me lead with that. So when this person is committing 6 or 7 crimes, I don't know his or her story. Maybe they were abused as a child. Maybe they're hungry. So my remedy is to find their life story to see how we could help first. I have no desire to put them in jail, but I need to protect you. And that's the calibration that we have. I've put police officers on the stand. I've cross-examined them. So whether they commit 7 or 8 crimes to me is not the issue. The issue is what.
Notice he says he puts police officers on the stand. He didn't talk about these criminals. He's talking about putting cops on the stand. This is an anti-police city in an anti-police state in an anti-police West Coast, Best Coast, right? And I always say West Coast, Best Coast because it's funny, because it's clearly, it is. You want to talk about numbers for homelessness? West Coast, Best Coast. You want to talk about drug overdoses? West Coast, Best Coast. You want to talk about highest cost of housing, highest levels of inflation, highest rates of unemployment? West Coast, Best Coast. We got all those numbers. We're number one. We're number one.
Why are they committing these crimes?
Media outlets like Newsweek to the New York Post covering Harrell's answer. Local conservative pundits took to social media, while popular local Instagram accounts mentioned it as well. The Trump administration also weighed in, with Stephen Miller, President Trump's deputy chief of staff for policy, saying this. But what's lost in the coverage is how Harrell's challenger answered the same question.
One specific strategy that I think we need to do much more of to be effective on this problem of repeat offenders is effective diversion programs. So we have here in Seattle law enforcement assisted diversion, which is a nationally recognized program.
I'm sorry, incarcerate them. Period. Get them off the streets. Period. Get them away and out of society, even if it's just for a break. Because that's what we're not getting with this revolving door. Hey, man, we're going to put an ankle bracelet on you and, you might cut it off and you might just run out and commit more crimes. But we're willing to take that risk with our constituents, with our citizens, in order for you, the multi-time felon, to experience restorative justice reform. Because it's been working out so well. It works so great. So great. 91-time felon we're talking about.
Where if someone is arrested, they have the opportunity, instead of going through that booking and jail process, to be diverted into a path with case management, if they're homeless, shelter, housing, with services to help them be successful there.
Wilson, who sees herself more left in the political spectrum than Harrell, says jail is not necessarily the go-to for low-level offenses, even for repeat offenders. In fact, some progressive candidates want to bring back community court, which allows for alternative sentencing and not jail time. Community court was canceled by the city attorney's office that said it was not effective.
Let's hear it out.
Community court back if she were elected mayor.
That's a good question, and I am actually not sure about whether the answer is yes or no.
Well, Wilson went on to say that if she were elected mayor, that she would analyze the issue of community court some more and come to a decision with the city attorney.
Okay, so you know why the community court, why that was shit-canned, for lack of a better word, was because it had such a high rate of the criminals reoffending. It had such a high, I can't remember what the numbers were, but I mean, it was one of those deals where you looked at it and you went, geez, wow. Wow, it's that bad? That community court works that poorly? So, in a city where justice reform is rah, 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 hey, let's not incarcerate anybody. When you have a community court get shut down, it's because it's so obvious and so bad that just flat out didn't work. But it's like a lot of liberal policy, a lot of libtard policy. Hey, let's just try this again. Maybe if we just do it for a longer time period, maybe if we just spend more money, maybe if we just give them another shot, and everybody knows that's not going anywhere. So the whole community diversion, that's just nonsense. But hey, in a city like Seattle, that's what we do. That's what we do. We don't do things to protect our citizens, because our citizens continually vote for this type of policy by putting politicians in place like the nut job we just heard talking about. And now both of those folks, our current mayor and probably our new mayor, I mean, they've both just, it's not going to be good for Seattle. But nobody wants to admit that, because the alternative is they'd have to vote Republican, and good Lord, they would rather die in a flaming ball of fire than vote for somebody that voted for Trump. Because Trump derangement syndrome is so bad here in the state of Washington. People are literally mental. People are mental here in Washington state. I'm around them all the time, and you're like, wow, you are mentally unstable, incompetent, and I'm going to need to move away from you because you are a Looney Tune. We got just a ton of those here. And yet when something bad happens to them, 911, can you send a police officer over? And then invariably you'll hear, they've broken into my store 14 times and there's no support from the police. Huh. Weird. Didn't see that one coming, did you? No, right? Actions have consequences. Except if you're a criminal in Washington State. Except if you're a criminal in Seattle. Or Portland. Or San Francisco. Or any of these big blue libtard states, right? Okay, that's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.